Hello, welcome to Fantastic Beats. 3 people, 3 tracks. We swap and we talk about them. I'm Jack Chuter.
And I'm Lizzie Maris.
And our guest today is music maniac and all-round superstar Tom Withey. Thomas Nigel Withey. Tom Withey. Hello, Tom Withey.
Hello, that's me, yes. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us on this here podcast. So we've got 3 tracks, 1 each. Lizzie's going to kick us off. Lizzie, what you got?
Okay, so I have a track by Gorillaz, and this track is called Superfast Jellyfish off their Plastic Beach album. So this has been a favourite of mine for a long time. I think I saw them at Glastonbury many years ago, I think when this album had just come out. So this track went down really, really well. It is really, really catchy anyway, but live it just really resonated because it's kind of got this like bass which just really worked on a big old pyramid stage at Glastonbury. It went down well. So this song I wanted to talk about because I think for its time, 2010, it's incredibly forward facing. So it's from the album Plastic Beach, which if you think about it, 2019 is the year of everybody kind of getting really concerned about plastic use and thinking that we might need to change that. These guys were onto this 9 years ago, and Plastic Beach is all about, you know, in many ways like sustainability and fake worlds and things. And Superfast Jellyfish really is kind of a comment on like fast food, convenient food, junk food, throwaway food, and draining the seas and all of that awful stuff. And I just picked it up because I just thought, wow, that song's been onto it for a long time. Now there are lots of environmental songs that go back to like the 40s and 30s, like this, you know, it's not the first one, but I just think it's really interesting to bring this song up now because it's been onto it for quite a while. I also just think it's a total banger of a song. It has samples in it from a 1986 commercial, which I think is from a microwave breakfast, which it mentions at the beginning. And it is a brand or like a product called Great Start Breakfasts. Because at the beginning you kind of get this like alarm clock going off, like you've woken up, and then you get this very kind of like chirpy, kind of like you've got time for breakfast. And that is a sample from a real commercial. The lyrics are really funny. So you have Griff Rhys from Super Furry Animals in there, and you also have De La Soul as well, which is really an odd combo, those two together. But my God, it works. What's Griff Rhys doing? He the seas are radioactive.
Oh right.
Yeah, he does the vocals. He does the singing, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Damon Albarn is singing at all. Is he?
I don't think he is. I think it's De La Soul, and it's him.
Damon, right? Yeah.
And you really can tell, and I couldn't tell for the longest time, but it's when he says radioactive because it's so Welsh. Because you couldn't actually, I mean, no offence to him, but I wouldn't know his voice that well.
No, right.
So, so you have those two, which is, you know, if you think about it, that's quite a weird mix, but Plastic Beach is the album of bringing in very interesting collabs. I think it's an incredibly catchy song. I think it's really funny, the things that like the rappers say, like when they're laughing and things, and they're sort of like talking about like throwaway toys, and I like that, and laughing, and I want some chicken. It's just it's a really light-hearted song, but then it's just absolutely like a total banger as well, and that bass is so bouncy. So it's a great song, but I just wanted to bring it up because this song was about 9 years ahead of its time. And I think that is worth talking about.
Fair.
Jack, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I've known the song basically since I've known you. So since about 2011, when you said, "Oh, I really like this song." It's all right. I mean, the thing is, I've never listened to it that closely, but I do like the fact that it's about this, you know, very synthetic, fast, kind of low nutrition food. And then if you kind of listen to the structure of the song itself as well, it's very throwaway, but the chorus sounds like a breakfast jingle. It's all like light and kind of shiny and, you know, very catchy as well, you know, just like those adverts. And also what they do is that the second verse, which got me the first time I listened to it, and then I was like, oh, okay, it kind of fits with the theme. It's just basically the first, like half the first verse repeated, and you kind of hear it, and because it's a rap, it kind of feels weird, because you're like, it's so obvious that they've just basically tacked on the first verse again. But then when you think about, you know, something which is basically designed as a fast commodity, like just cheap and ready to roll, and has the facade of like, you know, just being a completed thing, then it kind of works quite well. I also like that in the second verse it does sound like the facade's kind of coming down, because you got the synths that sound like they're melting in the background. I liked all the silly voices. Again, they sounded like cereal box cartoons. I thought that was cool. It's all right. I mean, it's not a song that I feel compelled to come back to loads, and I find that a lot with Gorillaz, is that like I kind of think, oh, this is a catchy thing, and I never really feel like I want to dig too much deeper than that. But
you could almost sort of argue that kind of fits in with the theme of the song itself and the whole album, really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's the thing that sort of, as I was listening more to the lyrics, that came through to me. But I just also, I was like, yeah, cool, I get that. There's like almost a commodification of the whole thing. But now I realise that, I'm like, cool, I'm kind of done with the music though as well. What did you think of it anyway, Tom?
Well, I liked it. I mean, this is the first time, I can't remember hearing this song before, so it was the first time. I'd never really dipped into Plastic Beach at all, but I'd heard of the album and Gorillaz and everything. But yeah, I had a similar experience to you, Jack, with it's a real catchy tune. That's what hit me the first, and it's really light and it bounces along, and you've got Griff Rhys doing a bit of a falsetto there, which fits in with the sort of light plasticky feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I really like the synths in the background, which kind of you can concentrate on more after a few listens, and they just it's almost like you scratch the surface and everything's not quite as bubbly and as pristine
totally
as it might seem on the surface, which I thought was quite a nice touch for that. But I enjoyed the song. I obviously, because Gorillaz are a bit of they're kind of like a visual band as well, with all of the artwork that usually goes with their songs. I thought I'd check out the video, just to have a little look and see what's happening there. And there's not a lot. Yeah. So
there's not a lot.
No. What I was going to say was there's not the characters. The usual characters don't appear. So you haven't got the four guys.
The animated.
The
what have you got? So what's the deal with the video?
Well, you've got like it kind of follows along with the theme of the song.
Commercials, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a commercial, isn't it? And you've got this sort of cartoon, illustrated jellyfish that sort of floats around, and it becomes a little bit psychedelic. So it almost implies that. But what I got from it is it kind of implies that eating it sends you a bit sort of spaced out and a bit high, really,
like a sugary treat.
Nice.
Yeah, like it's like there's a little bit something in there to make you think what you're getting is a bit more nutritious than it actually is. Maybe I'm taking it a bit too literally there.
No, I think you could be onto something.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting video. I had a couple of watches. It was filmed in a sort of strange. It was black and white, apart from this colourful jellyfish. So
yeah.
Almost as if it's saying, have this meal and it will brighten up your day, sort of thing.
Like a happy meal, like with you mentioned, like it comes with a plastic toy. And I suppose if that samples from a 1986 commercial, probably would have been black and white. So I suppose that's the whole theme of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I also like the bit in the rap, like right at the start where it comes in, it's got that pitched down voice. He sounds like he's about to kick off the rap, and I can't remember what he says, but he sounds like he's about to rhyme something, and instead he just like, I like that.
I like that.
So it sounds really like juvenile.
That's good. Yeah. just popping in there.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that one has landed as well as I thought it would. I think that one might have to go through the recycling. I'm not sure.
You just wanted to say that, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
That one's been consigned to the real life plastic beach.
It has, yeah.
I like the song. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
It was a catchy one. And it's been sunny. So I've been listening to it in the car, and it's
it's definitely a car sunny song.
Sunny car
absolutely.
song, totally.
Sunny car song.
Yeah, absolutely. While you're gassing up the planet, listen to a bit of this.
Well, the irony was lost on me. That's true.
Yeah. In your diesel car. I don't know, that's what you have. But
yeah, traction engine actually. So
while you dying like rabbits with the crunchy carrots. Gotta have it super fast.
A whole line of breakfast you've got time for.
Super fast, a coming last. But just in time for breakfast. Keep it true, forever blue. The night throws after aluminum. A crucial fun, aluminum. The sea is radioactive. The sea is radioactive.
All hail King Neptune.
Cool. So Tom, it's your song now. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I've picked. So my song is Dear Prudence by a little unknown indie band from the 1960s you might not have heard of, called the Beatles.
Interesting.
it'll never catch.
No. I'm sure they'll find it hard to gain traction in this day and age. But so I've picked the Beatles. So I've had a bit of a, probably last year I had a bit of a journey. So I hadn't actually, I know we were joking about it just now, but I hadn't actually listened to much of the Beatles. It was just what you catch in the zeitgeist, I guess.
Yeah.
You hear their songs all the time, especially living in this country. And last year I just thought, oh, well, I might as well, go back and check them out and just see what the fuss is about, really.
That's really nice, because so many people just could not be bothered with that, because it's almost like you don't need to do that work.
Can I just say, if I'd done this, you would accuse me of going through a phase.
Absolutely.
That is, my girlfriend accused me of the very same thing. So we're on similar territory there.
Yeah, but I mean, these are every few weeks. It's a lot to live with. But I just like that. I think with the Beatles, it's almost like overdone, oversaid. Like you can't state how much they're a classic band. So it is nice that you went back and did that work, because you so easily could have not.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought I might as well just talk about what my experience is, because I doubt I'd find a unique angle on the Beatles that no one else has thought of. So yeah, this song kind of I feel like it kind of represents my experience with them, because. So I started listening, and I just fell into, it was almost falling into a rabbit hole. When you're younger, or at least when I was younger, I can only really speak for myself, I connected in with music in a different way maybe than I do now. So you're hearing things for the first time, and it's all new and exciting, and you're kind of ready to fall in love with all these different tracks and all these different sounds and everything that you've never really heard before.
Yeah.
And I thought, as I got older, this kind of stopped happening, and I liked stuff, but I never really connected and almost fell in love with it the same way as I did when I was a teenager. But for some reason, the Beatles had that effect on me. So when I was listening to, I really, really just fell into a rabbit hole. I was just listening to it all the time. The phase went on for quite a while, and it was quite a profound experience, because I thought, I didn't think I would ever have that again. I never thought that I would be able to have maybe the same feelings as I did when I was much younger. So much younger than today. I didn't think I'd be able to have those experiences again.
I enjoyed that.
Thank you very much. A little reference there.
Jack didn't get that.
No, I didn't. Fill my head.
I was expecting gales of laughter, but a knowing giggle is I'm absolutely fine with that too. So yeah, that was my experience, and so this song kind of, I feel like it represents that slightly, because
nice.
You've got so the song, I think of it as being sort of sung from maybe a child's perspective, or singing to a child, and John Lennon singing "Come out to play," "Come with me and I'll show you," you living in this dull world, I can show you so much more. and it resonated with me, because that's almost like the feeling I got when I started listening to them for the first time. So it was sort of serendipity that this one came, and the way that the song. So the track immediately before this on the album, on the Beatles, the White Album, is Back in the USSR, which is like a crazy Beach Boy style, really high energy song by Paul McCartney. And it's got airplane noises and all sorts of stuff going on. He's just throwing everything at it. And I don't know if you heard the beginning of this song, kind of, it starts with like what sounds like a bit of feedback.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that's the plane noise carry off from Back in the USSR before it, and then the song kind of, and then it kind of, he brings you down, so you've got, you're coming down. Don't really know what I'm trying to say here. I don't really know musical terms, so it's quite hard. But like you're coming down in pitch or whatever, and he's kind of bringing you right down and slowly, and bringing you into his world a little bit. So you start off from the perspective of Prudence, and then the song kind of reveals itself into a climax. And I just thought it really kind of resonated with me, because it was almost the experience of listening to them myself. So and also it's just a great song. It's so catchy. The bass line is brilliant when that comes in. I really love the bass line, and by Paul McCartney there, and it's just a song I fell in love with straight away, and I will listen to all the time. So I guess my phase is continuing, but so that's really why I wanted to pick this song, because it reminded me that you can still have new experiences with music, even stuff that was recorded 50 years before you listen to it. It was really profound experience, really, and one I'm glad to have had.
Oh,
wow!
Blimey, yeah. I that was wonderful, and I've not really got super into the Beatles ever. I don't have an epiphany story like that. They've kind of just been on the edge of my consciousness, and I thought, 7-8 years ago, I was like, I'll give Sgt. Pepper a whirl. Like, I've heard a lot about it. And then I think, every couple of years I'd be like, I'll give this one a whirl now. And I never really got much further than checking out Sgt. Pepper's and Revolver. And that's pretty much my terrain. I think I listened to the White Album once. So I didn't remember this song when I heard it. But I really liked it straight away. It's quite disarming, this song, I think. I think the way the bass comes in, as you say, is very odd. Like, it doesn't come in at the point that you would expect, and the way it comes in as well feels very odd. It's sort of like almost sounds like it's asking permission to join the song a bit, which I thought was really nice. And the thing that I kept hanging on was this like Dear Prudence thing, which is the title of the song, but also a recurrent lyric in it, because it sounds like it's like letter writing, and you get the sense of that the Beatles are sending these letters to Prudence and not getting any replies, because the track kind of builds a bit on the verses, and then the drums stop and then it restarts. It's almost like that they're just putting the letter out, not getting a reply, and then sitting down and writing another and doing it over and over again. And I was reading a little bit about the origin of the song, actually, which sounds like when they were doing meditation and being spiritually taught at the foot of the Himalayas. They were on this meditation retreat, and there was a woman there called Prudence Farrow, who is the sister of Mia Farrow, who was getting so into meditation in a big way, and she'd, I think, got into this idea of spirituality and transcendence through LSD, and then gone mega hard on meditation, and had basically like locked herself in her room and was just meditating all day every day for like 3 weeks on end. And this teacher charged John and Paul with trying to lure her out and say she needs to socialise with the other students and stuff. You need to find a way to get her to just break out and to come outside, basically. So this song was their way of trying to invite Prudence outdoors, which again kind of feels like it keeps in with that idea of them sort of trying to get Prudence's attention and then not get it. You never hear Prudence at all. I think that's wicked. It's got such a strange and alluring structure that the song does, in a way that I just keep wanting to come back to it, because it never kind of settles down into something. And then when it does kind of pick up momentum, basically the drums just start being improvised. So there's never a point where everything is just consistent, which I really, really like. And in fact, I read that it was Paul McCartney playing the drums on this track as well, which is interesting.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, which I was like, I don't know much about the Beatles. I didn't know he did that. I didn't know that they, had a little dabble.
I think there might have been an incident where, for the first sort of part of the recording, Ringo had a bit of not a breakdown, but he'd had enough of all the fighting that was happening around this time, I think, and he sort of packed up and legged it. And it meant that, so Paul McCartney played drums on a few tracks of this one, and back in the USSR as well he did.
No way.
And before Ringo came back a bit later. But it's a strange little footnote, really, because the drumming is a good part of this song. Yeah, it gets its own little moment towards the end, and you hear it just when the kind of climax is coming with the piano and everything, and it really kind of hits.
Yeah, and like all the hand claps and stuff, I thought that was a really nice touch. I also like as well, so the guitar playing it's really interesting. As soon as I read that they were on like a spiritual retreat, the guitar has 2 low notes in it, which I think quite deliberately mimic like a low drone. There's like an Indian drone instrument called a tambura, which we'll talk about a bit more in a bit, actually, when we come to our next song, but it has a very distinctive interval that basically runs in Indian classical music, runs through the entire piece and just stays to 2 pitches. And they have that in the guitar part, which was, as soon as I clocked onto it, I was like, oh shit. And then it makes sense, because obviously they're very much into Indian spirituality. And I enjoyed it a lot, and I will listen to it again and more. Lizzie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, really nice Beatles track, like very indicative of a Beatles track. Some of them you're like, is that the Beatles? But this one you're like, I know straight away. Yeah. And I think what characterises that for me, which is really evident in this track, is that there's so many, I would describe it as like gaps. So I feel like if you were to see this track split out, because this is probably how they recorded it, there would be 4 tracks. Right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Very simple, clear, just 4 of them, with quite a lot of, no Beatles song is particularly kind of fast, and you can always pick out what those 4 people are distinctly, or 3 I suppose in this case, are distinctly doing. Yeah. And I really like that, because there's space in it. I feel like this is when music, before they learnt to like fill it all up,
yeah.
And I really like the bass in it. The bass is really cool. The way it kind of is always descending, it definitely, I was like, that's the Lucy in the Sky bass line, definitely. Well, it isn't, but it reminded me of it. Yeah. And I like that it's descending. It kind of goes with the, like, the story behind it, that they were trying to maybe pull someone out of, they were in this very meditative state themselves, and this descending bass line's kind of dragging them in, and maybe dragging Prudence back in. And this has that really Beatles structure where it goes, I've forgotten the exact melody, which is awful. I've drawn a diagram for myself where
great radio.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, where it sort of goes like da 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 ah.
Yeah.
So it's like three or 4 phrases that kind of move up, and then it just ends in a like ooh. It's not quite that, but that structure really indicative of a Beatles track. So yeah, it's a really nice track. I didn't actually know it that well. When I read it, it felt like one that I should know, because it's a Beatles song. I really didn't. And I also discovered there's a Susie and the Banshees cover, which I really liked.
You're into, aren't you?
Actually, yeah, I love them, and I love their covers. So yeah, this was nice. I do particularly enjoy your story of this, though, Tom, because you're right. Like, I will say, like, when I saw that you picked it, I was like, how are we going to do this, though? Yeah. Because you kind of can't just be like, I think they're really good. So I love that story. That has so much colour in it, that story. It's really nice. So yeah, really good track. Really good track.
I think it's quite nice as well, because this song is basically about just how lovely nature is, and your song, Lizzie, was about plastic and artificiality. It's a nice contrast. I've enjoyed that in these picks this week.
Sounds like you're getting a bit deep and thoughtful there, Jack. Do you want to tell us about your next track?
Oh, yeah. So this is a song by Alice Coltrane called Journey in Satchidananda. So this was released in 1971 on the album of the same name. Alice Coltrane being a pianist, harpist, composer, big in the jazz scene, spiritual leader in later life as well, she was. And also I think you can hear that really in this track, the fact that, I mean, like the Beatles, Indian spirituality was becoming a big part of her life at this point. And in fact, Satchidananda is the name of her spiritual teacher at this time. She was a disciple of Satchidananda. And I just think this song is just an absolute bloody powerhouse. It starts with this like bass groove, which is quite bluesy. It's like a double bass groove, quite slow, quite woozy, and then you've got the drums, you've got that Indian drone instrument, the tambura, that kind of runs through it like a river. You've got Pharoah Sanders on soprano saxophone, which is kind of this nasal like flutter that goes over the top of the track. And then you've got Alice Coltrane on harp doing these lovely like waterfall cascades. But also with Alice, I think as well, she plays the harp in a way which is also can be quite spiky and quite not aggressive but hard as well. There's a lot of that going on. It was a track recorded in Alice's home studio, and I don't get the impression they had loads of space. Like, it's always felt like a track which is incredibly close quarters. Like, all the instruments sound like they're sort of interlinking or intermingling. It also feels, to me, I've always listened to this track and thought that it sounds very hot in the studio as well. There's just this sense of like temperature and humidity. And Pharoah Sanders, the saxophonist, has this lovely like vibrato thing that he does where it sort of like, you know, wobbles but quite slowly. It sounds to me like rippling heat or something. Obviously it's I mean, it's at its core it's like a jazz track, but it's like nothing really that I've ever heard within the realms of jazz. And I think the really special thing about Alice is, I mean, she was really influenced by her husband John Coltrane, and a lot of the players on this record and also her other records as well are people in John Coltrane's former bands and stuff like that. But she just had so much going on beyond just jazz. I mean, she went on to like really explore classical music in a big way and pull that in. Like, she just seems to have this adoring like love of all music and all influences, and this track to me just sounds like someone absolutely soaking up all of the sound that she's getting and then just pushing it back out there as well. I just love it so much. I could talk about it so much more. And also as well, I feel like this track could be twice as long and I'd still be into it. In a way, I'm glad it's not, because, you know, I just end up listening to it again, and there's something about that refinement which I think is quite nice as well. So yeah, I like it. Tom, what do you reckon to it?
I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. Yes,
I'm so glad.
It's strange how as soon as it started I was in, you know. I didn't you know, I wasn't take a second to think, oh yeah, I like this bit, or yeah, and it didn't grow on me anyway. I just liked it straight away. It was almost as if you're sort of thrust in halfway through, yeah, with this earthy sort of bass, which I really loved, which was kind of almost grounded you throughout the song. Mm-hmm. And then you get the saxophone and this absolutely brilliant harp, and all of it. Nothing seems out of place or where it should. There's nothing where it shouldn't be. It's all very. I don't know if I was influenced by the name of it, but it did feel like a journey to me.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know whether the name, if I didn't know it was called that or if it's called something else, whether I'd think the same thing. But I do feel like you're tethered to this bass line, and then everything else is kind of washes over you. The harp is really just beautiful, and it's not often you get to hear a harp, and it fits so well in this track, and you've got the sort of Eastern feel to it. It all just really, really worked for me, and I really loved it. Yeah, I'll be listening again.
Oh, nice, because obviously I've seen you in the time since I chose this track, and there's the policy on Fantastic Beats that you save all your thoughts for the podcast, but I was looking at your face for any clues when we were kind of talking on it, but you kept it well hidden, your opinions.
Yeah, so I mean, I had a complete poker face all the time, even though I was bursting to just say I love it. I managed to keep a lid on my emotions.
Nice.
But I mean, I've never listened to Alice Coltrane before, and not really much of John Coltrane, to be honest. But if it's like this, and I'll definitely be listening. It's interesting, the parallels between this and the sort of Beatles, because you say this is like the 70s was this that she recorded this
71
so it was sort of right in that sweet spot when Eastern sort of spiritualism was hitting.
Yeah,
I can
like
imagine
yoga starts happening in church halls.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and people are really starting to, and swamis become almost like rock stars.
Right. Yeah.
Big famous guys, and it really just fits. But it's not like anything the Beatles did. It's they were doing pop songs. They were doing really good songs, but there was nothing I feel as immersive or as that sort of carried you along, floating along like this one did.
Yeah, that's. I always feel like that Alice was climbing out. Her music's like a ladder, just like she climbs out of her music and to something that she's trying to strive to that's higher. And that's definitely, I feel, her late husband John Coltrane was a similar thing. I think that's probably why they connected. They were both trying to just climb out of their music. Lizzie, what do you make of this one?
Yeah, so this track is a room that is kind of filled with really heavy smoke that just hangs above below the ceiling.
Correct.
And there's lots of red velvet furniture in there with tassels.
Yeah.
That's what this track is.
So, bang on.
Yeah.
It smells like nag champa. The incense.
Correct.
It's a beautiful track. I do know her work a little bit because I've heard you play it around the house a lot, Jack. Yeah, I really like it. It's kind of got this gently walloping bass line, which I think is played on a double bass here.
Yes.
Which kind of, in amongst everything else that kind of floats in and out, seemingly without much structure, but I imagine there is quite a lot of structure. The bass line is the solid, so it is nice when you allow yourself to go into that meditative state. The bass line for me, I really latched onto, and I was like, that's reminding me I am still breathing and alive. That's kind of whilst everything else washes around you. I like the bass line, and because it walks down a little bit, I felt like every time it did, when I really let myself go with this track, it was walking me deeper into this meditation every time, even though it stays at it's playing the same thing, but it's that sense of moving you down and down and down into this meditation.
A bit like the Beatles, in fact, isn't it?
Really similar, actually. Yeah, like taking you really down into something. I like the heavy use of bells, because I also like the bells because I don't really think there's a rhythm to it. They are just a constant.
Yes, like waterfall or something.
Yeah, just always there, or kind of whenever the percussionist fancies it. There's the bells, and it just really made me think of a lot of opening lotus flowers slowly.
Oh, lovely.
It's a beautiful track. It really is, and definitely want to explore more of her work, certainly. I think also it could annoy me. There are times when this is definitely not what I want. This is definitely for me an evening track, drawing things in and down track. This is not listening on the bus track, and that would irritate me. But that's,
if you don't want nag champa on the bus either, do you really? So
no.
Kind of figures. No. But I think it's interesting you say that, because also as well, I've seen people comment on this track and say like, oh, this is a bit too... So the saxophonist is called Pharaoh Sanders. They commented saying, this track's a bit too Pharaoh Sanders for me, which I think, like, when you become an adjective...
In it, are they? The saxophonist is hardly in it, really.
He's big in it, but I mean, I feel like his presence is quite big. But did you not think it was?
I didn't really notice it. No, that isn't that funny.
Really interesting.
I was really tuned into that bass, though.
Right, you were all in on that
stuck
bass.
On the bass.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised by that.
Yeah, what is in the fact that... Did you think it was, or that it wasn't?
I totally had pretty much the same experience by the sounds of things as Lizzie did.
Really?
So that's what it sounds like. I think, I was grounded with that bass line, and I was thought of it in a different way. But I think we both kind of almost had a tangible sort of presence within the song where you started imagining you were in a different place almost. And I definitely had that, but like you say, Lizzie, I didn't think. It's very strange. It's almost as if people were waiting to hear the saxophone, maybe, and people who are more tuned in to jazz and know a bit more about it. Totally. They were sort of like, it looms a bit larger in their mind because they were ready for him. Yeah.
Right, maybe that's
it. I could so easily pretend that it wasn't there because it climbed so much higher than everything else. When it kind of came in, I almost tuned it out a bit because I was like, well, what a silly distraction to this beautiful meditation.
Oh, for goodness sake.
That's really interesting that myself and Tom were like, to like the main guy.
Well, I feel like it's probably because he's playing the soprano sax, which is the instrument that I'm learning at the moment. So I am so attuned to hearing that instrument and that sound at any point. So I think as soon as it came in, I was like, right, I know what that is. But also as well, like just listening to saxophone players has become such a big thing for me. I think his whole performance as well, just the more I listen to this track, it just gets more and more beautiful. I am quite almost alarmed that it didn't strike you guys because I think it just looms so large for me. I mean, that's the wonderful thing, isn't it, about listening to this track and being able to get so many different perspectives and have objects loom larger than others. But there's a bit in the second half where he's just like going, but like better than that, where it's like really kind of frantic.
Pretty good.
Yeah, thank you. It's my best effort. But no, it's kind of like this frantic freewheeling kind of thing that completely strips away from the pace of the song. It's just like it's almost sounds like someone's eyes rolling back. I adore it. But that's great. I mean, it's cool that we all, hang ourselves onto different aspects of the song. That's really neat. Cool. Well, this has been Fabalab. Tom, thank you very much for joining us for a bit of Fantastic Beats. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I've had a fun time.
Cool. And Lizzie, if people want to keep up to speed with us and what we're doing on the internet and all that good stuff, where should they be headed?
They should go to Twitter if they are so inclined and look up fantastic_pod, or you can find our website at fantasticbeatspodcast.com, or if you'd like to be on the show or you have an idea or something you want to say about this episode, you can email us at hello@fantasticbeatspodcast.com.
Love it. Cool. Well, thanks very much for listening, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.